My next guest is a celebrated Australian performer, director and playwright with a career spanning theatre, film and television. He's received Green Room Awards for Best Actor, Best Director and Best New Australian Play, and many other nominations for his work. Welcome to Showtime, Peter Houghton.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's so great to catch up with you. And I want to talk to you in a sec about the work that you're doing with Red Stitch. But I know that you've done a lot of film, a lot of TV, a lot of performing, and a lot of directing.
Yes.
And some writing.
Yes.
How do you manage that transition? I mean, that's so many different creative outlets.
Yeah, well, I think one feeds the other, to be honest. I started off as an actor, and from that, I suppose I always wrote really when I was a younger person, but not for the stage. But through acting, like a lot of actors experience, I think, you might be in a production and get a bit frustrated and go, not quite what I would have done, which kind of ignites the directing ambition a little,
Come on, no performance ever thought that of a direction or a note, surely.
It's a bad slander. But yeah, you do have your dark moments, So I kind of looked at the craft of directing and didn't really formally start down that path until I was probably about sort of 7 or 8, maybe 9 years into my acting career. And I'd always been writing short plays and stuff like that. And then I started doing solo shows also out of necessity a bit, both financial and, sometimes when you have a patch where you're not working, and all of that just started to kind of congeal around a piece I wrote in about 2006-07, I think it was, a piece called The Pitch, which was a solo show that had quite a bit of success here and overseas. And it was the kind of encouragement I needed, I suppose, just to sort of, sometimes you need a little bit of a shot in the arm to keep writing, particularly. I find it's such a lonely art form. Sitting on your desk at your home, it's sort of the environment where you're most prone to self-doubt, I think. As an actor, you've always got a director or other people around you either confirming or denying your approach. And but with writing, it can get a little bit kaleidoscopic sometimes. And so having that piece be well received was a real shot in the arm as a playwright. And having worked a lot, probably most of my career has been in New Australian work. So I have done classics and so on, but a lot of it's been, the bulk of it I would say, has been New Australian work. So I felt reasonably comfortable in that space, I guess. And I love doing all three. I think I'd probably I might get a bit bored perhaps if I stayed in one stream. So I like, sometimes after you've done a performance as an actor and you get a little bit burnt out, you go, gee, I wouldn't mind sitting in the chair now and kind of doing the orchestration this time, or having a break at home and writing, if you get a bit peopled out or whatever. So they kind of go together quite well, I think.
Can I just say I love that expression, peopled out?
Yeah.
I related to it as soon as you said it.
Yeah.
I pinched that one.
Yeah. Yeah.
I could only imagine, Peter, that your approach to writing might be a little bit different given your experience as both a performer and a director as well.
Yes. Well, yes, that's true. I mean, I really don't have much trouble capturing dialogue, and that's an advantage of being an actor. I think the hard thing for me as a writer is structure and form, because I'm not trained as a writer and I haven't been sort of immersed in that kind of classical storytelling kind of matrix at the beginning of my career. And so that stuff I've had to pick up along the way, really, by being in rehearsal rooms and working on other people's plays. But the dialogue part of it is definitely helped by being an actor, because you kind of hear the voices when you're an actor, and you kind of imagine what this guy would sound like or that girl would sound like, and you sort of, I think the dialogue kind of comes easily, and because I often work in comedy too, it's that sort of, I kind of make myself laugh, and if it makes me laugh, well, that stays in, and so on. But yeah, structure is always the hardest thing with story, I think. It's probably why a lot of people focus on adaptation these days. Particularly, adaptation has become such a big part of our industry, and it's because largely because you sort of get the story for free, and the story is the hard part, I think.
And how have you found that process, the writing and then bringing it out into the world, and then getting the notes that you will often give as a director, but receiving them from a writer's perspective? Is that a tough thing to receive?
Yeah, I think also because, I mean, I Yes, it is tough, and it's. I think it's also because you're just with the project much longer when you write. Usually, I mean, some people do write quickly, but I take quite a while to write something, and so of course, like anything that you spend more time on, it hurts a bit more when someone points out the weaknesses of it, and they're often right. Something that you haven't seen, you're too close to it, whatever. It's you go up a particular alley, and then you haven't got quite that space of objectivity that the first-time audience member has. And you go, of course, I took that for granted that would be understood or comprehended or whatever. But of course, seeing that for the first time, that must have been a complete mystery. Like you can miss pretty big things when your face is close to the page, and you don't really have the benefit. I mean, in terms of play development, you're in this country particularly, you're lucky to get maybe 2 or 3 days of paid development on a work. It's often not enough to substantially move a piece forward. But if you can get the best thing, your friends are so important in this industry, and I'm lucky to have a lot of really kind and honest friends who've been bored several times, or maybe offered a dinner or a glass of wine or something to sit around and read some half-baked piece of work that's not quite ready to go yet. But and in that kind of friendship space, if they're encouraged to be honest too, and I always say, give me the bad news. Like a pat on the back's nice, but the bad news is kind of more useful in a way. Like that can go on for quite a while. I might assemble people around a dinner table once, I might do it again a month later, and just that sort of ongoing process. With the full awareness that at some time I'll be tapped on the shoulder to return the favour to, which I'm happy to do. That's the collaborative nature of it, I guess, and perhaps what's a bit different about playwriting to novel writing, or I don't know how the hell people write novels. It's such an incredible art, isn't it? To produce a piece of work that's so big, without much assistance really, until you get to your script editor, until you get to your manuscript editor at the end of the process. But I couldn't do that. I don't have the patience or the or really the sort of ability, I don't think, to hold that much story, because a good play is only about 100 pages, a full play, whereas a novel can be 500 of solid text. So, which is why I admire Joanna so much, with this piece. She's such a workhorse, but she's also got this great self-editing facility, which is quite unique, really. It's,
And before we jump into Honor, you were talking about the sometimes lonely existence of a playwright, and,
yes.
and not having ever written a novel or a play. I can only imagine that at least when you're writing a play, the finish line is complete and utter collaboration.
Yes.
With performers, with directors, and with all the other creatives that come to put a work like this together.
Yes.
That must be part of the driver for you, that it's going to get to a point, audiences are going to see it, you're going to get the unfiltered reaction in the room. And is that a buzz, or is that absolutely daunting and overwhelming, or is it a bit of column A, bit of column B? Yeah,
I don't know why you do it. Sometimes it's slightly masochistic. I think I got into this because I was at the risk of kind of oversharing here. I was a very shy child, and I kind of looked in the mirror with some degree of honesty, I think, when I was about 17 or 18, and thought, I'm going to have to do something about this, because my life will be limited if I don't deal with this kind of shyness. And I think I chose this industry in a way because I knew it was going to force that issue. Because I hadn't made that many friends at school, etc. I was a bit of a kind of quirky kind of kid, I suppose, and like a lot of people who work in this industry. And then of course when you come into it, you kind of find your tribe a bit, and you go, oh right, there's all these other oddballs as well. But that kind of collaborative thing that you're talking about is sort of essential. I think, like, it's you kind of get to a point actually where you where you actually can't do it on your own. Like, it's sort of, you just go, God, I really need input now. The rehearsal room's always great like that as a playwright, because you walk in, you see the first reading, and you go, oh, it can feel a bit shonky, and you can see a few eyes rolling, and there's going to be a process of attrition and cuts and so on as you go through rehearsal. But it's just, it's a great feeling when a scene lifts off, or you come in maybe 2 weeks into a rehearsal period and you sit down and you watch his first stagger through or a run, and you go, oh, that wasn't as bad as I thought. That was, there's about 6 or 8 scenes in there that are actually kind of starting to kick it a bit, but the kind of the sort of shyness factor. I mean, the curing. I think that's what kind of happens in the room too, in a way. Like an audience comes in as a sort of disparate body of people who've come from different walks of life and very different days and stuff, and they sit in a room together, and by the end of it, ideally, they're kind of united in some way, however briefly, by this kind of shared experience. The campfire story sort of factor, and I really, I know it sounds a bit cliched to say this at the moment in a kind of fractured and difficult world we're in, but I think it's kind of one of theatre's best offers, really, is that ability to just get everyone together in the room and go, well, I know we've got a lot of differences and we disagree about a lot of things, but and you can show that on a stage, of course, because theatre is conflict based, like drama is conflict, and so you can actually play out some of the difficult arguments and disagreements, and everyone can get around them, but then you all walk out a little bit more, perhaps forgiving, of other perspectives, and so I love that about it too. I feel like it's broadened me a bit, and I've met people in the theatre over the years that I would never have met if I had stayed on the course I was going. So the social element's helpful to both the work and life, I think.
And of course, a lot of people in our industry have made lifelong friends through some of these collaborations that you're referring to.
That's right, yeah, and you might go back again and again and again and again. I mean, you actually, after a while, you actually have to kind of be a little bit stern with yourself and say, I can't work with the same people all the time, because of course that's a temptation. You sort of love each other, but it's really good to bring in new people too, particularly younger people. You can get very generation based as well. Like you'll have people who are around about your own age, and you tend to keep doing things, and it's sometimes you got to snap your fingers and go, I think we need to drag in a 22-year-old here just to kind of freshen up our ideas a bit, because you can get a bit locked in, perhaps. So yeah, but I love it, mate. I mean, and also it's too late to change. yeah.
Peter, right now you're working on Honor with Red Stitch.
Yes, yeah.
Tell me about Honor. What's the play about?
Well, it's written by Joanna Murray-Smith. It's probably Australia's, at the moment, I would say she's probably our most produced playwright. She's kind of taken over the mantle somewhat from David Williamson, I guess, in the 70s and 80s. She's a brilliant craftsperson, social writer, I would say, issues-based to some extent, but kind of more a dissector of human behaviour and the way we lie to ourselves and deceive ourselves. I reckon for me she's at her very best when she's throws out some sort of kind of slightly scary scenario. In the case of this play, a very well established, loving marriage with apparently no cracks or evident problems or particular issues, and suddenly it falls apart. And it falls apart because a third party comes in there. It could be characterised as a midlife crisis or something, but essentially it just represents this kind of fatal blow to all their bearings in life, basically, and their love for each other. And the word honour is spelled Honor, by the way. It's actually the character's name. Yeah. So it's really her story, and so I play her husband, George. We're getting along great. A journalist comes to do a story about me. I'm a kind of prominent kind of academic, intellectual journalist sort of character, public intellectual, I suppose you'd say. I'd be the sort of person who appears on ABC's Q&A and pops over and does this and that. I've got an opinion on everything. Well regarded. Honor has to some extent done that thing that often women do of having to sacrifice her own career for me. And then I meet a younger woman and I'm out, and I won't go into the way it plays out so much just from a spoiler point of view, but that happens pretty early in the play. That's the premise, really. And then the rest of the players are reckoning with what's real, what isn't. Can you be 30 years deep in a marriage and then suddenly go, I don't know you at all? The way we surprise each other, the things we don't know about each other and ourselves. You can certainly make the argument that my character doesn't really understand himself that well. And I remember this play. I actually saw this play. It's the 30th anniversary. It premiered at Playbox Theatre down here, which is now Malthouse Theatre, in 1995. I saw that production. I'm actually doing Merry Wives of Windsor at the moment at night in the Botanical Gardens, and I'm working with Natasha Herbert, who played the young woman in the first production 30 years ago. So it's interesting grilling her about that production. And so this play, at the time, it was a bit of a bombshell. It was kind of, you get the theatre audience coming along and going, lots of couples sitting next to each other, watching this slightly confronting sort of take on, what's real and what isn't, what you can believe in relationships and what you can't. Can you trust people really? And it sent a little bit of a sort of chill down people's spines, I think, and it's hilarious as well. She can write a comic line, Joanna, So, so it's kind of intriguing, mysterious, confronting, funny at times, and really moving, I think. Caroline Lee's playing Honor, and she's doing a beautiful job. She's, really, I'm so amazed when actors just sit on the stage and start crying about something for real, and it's just, she's really impressive to watch. Sam Strong's directing; he's doing a beautiful job. Lucinda from the ensemble here, and Ella Ferris is playing the young woman who comes into the story. So it's a really beautiful cast. It's only a four-hander, and at Red Stitch, I think at Playbox, it was in a bigger room. At Red Stitch, you're right up on top of it. So it's a smaller theatre. You'll be sitting right on top of the action and watching this kind of domestic train wreck kind of, play out in the realest way, hopefully.
And you mentioned that it's the 30th anniversary of the play, Honor.
Yes.
We've changed a little bit in the last 30 years as a society, as a community, as
yes.
What is and isn't acceptable, what is and isn't, dare I say, normal.
Yes.
How do you think the work translates in 2025, 30 years on?
Well, it's been, the interesting thing about Honor is that it's sort of, I think, because it's so well written, really, it's kind of never not been done. So I think the draft, what was interesting with this actually was that, because it went from, I think after Playbox, there was an MTC production at some point down here. STC did it, everyone's done it in Australia. Then it went to Broadway and it was done there. I think Eileen Atkins played it, or Diana Rigg, I think, played it with Corin Redgrave on the West End. It just keeps getting revived. And as the script progressed through all those different kind of years and cultures too, because it sort of went through, it was shifted slightly, I think, for America and the US, there's been French productions. The script that ended up at the end of it was quite different from the Playbox production. And here at Red Stitch, they read the scripts and they go through different versions of it and stuff, and they went through it, and the kind of consensus was, strangely, that they wanted to go back to the first version, which was the 1995 Playbox version. And I asked them about that a bit. I said, what was why was that? And that was Joanna's view as well. She was happy to do that. And I think it was just that kind of, there was something, I don't know exactly, but it was almost like there was a sort of brightness and an impact about it that hadn't, in some ways, some of the problems hadn't been solved. Because sometimes there'd be a line and you go, wow, that is a harsh line. That stings, and it's like, and that's probably why it's good. It really hits on a character and you go, ouch, things like that. So I think, but in terms of your question really being more about how culture's changed perhaps, or the way we view things, it's probably not the kind of story that's too affected, to be honest, by shifting norms around other cultural issues outside of the story of just kind of heartbreak and shock, really. Those things are still on the table, I think, and whatever style of relationship you're in kind of doesn't really matter. It's sort of, as long as it's a loving relationship and people have made a commitment, and then it gets blown up by a hand grenade, it's like that's kind of all you need to know to invest in the story, I think.
There's also a reflective element to the work as well, isn't it? That sort of self-respect and self-discovery.
Yeah.
And I wonder if those have changed. I think we talk a lot more now about mental health and just sort of self-awareness stuff more so than we would have 30 years ago.
Well, that's right. There's actually a scene in there. I mean, it's interesting you mentioned that there's a scene in there which I just walked out of rehearsal now, and as I'm unfolding the story of, I'm actually sitting there talking to my partner and saying, I don't know why I'm doing it. I know it doesn't make any sense, essentially, but I'm doing it. I'm leaving you. And she's like, what are you talking about? And she sort of accuses me of being insane. I should go and see somebody. That could be read as gaslighting now, or that she's using those terms in an inappropriate way or whatever. Again, I'd sort of argue that's kind of what's good about it. Is she gaslighting me? Is she telling me the truth? Is she being inappropriate? Should you say that to somebody? Is that a fair strategy to kind of, she thinks I've lost my mind because I'm walking out the door with someone I barely know. It kind of makes no logical sense to her, But yeah, they're kind of interesting, those things, when you come to them, because that's right. I mean, it's probably not quite the language you'd use today, and we talked about that in rehearsal. But there's something so kind of stunningly immediate about it that, our decision is, well, let's keep it because it's sort of wrong. It does sound a little bit gaslighty, and it really hurts, and it undermines the character. Like it makes her look like, she's not being quite right. And for me, it gets, because she's saying it to me, it gets under my skin. And I was like, don't talk to me like that. It actually helps with my reaction. Yeah, so it really works for the drama. But yeah, it's I love that. But I mean, working on the Shakespeare plays even more stark, obviously, because you're dealing with social mores from whatever, I think it was, early 1600s. And it's kind of, again, amazing to me how much of it still rings true. And then there are lead balloons as well. but an amazing amount of it that just, you go, wow, that's like, what an interesting take on gender and stuff in 1600. These kind of empowered women just ripping this guy to pieces for the delight of the audience. Kind of almost revenge comedy, and it seems surprisingly, I mean, this is 300 years before the word feminism had even been heard. And so weird that the son of some glove maker from a country town in England comes up with something like that. I mean, which means it must have been in the culture already. I suppose there must have been a lot of, women walking around London going, oh God, you wouldn't believe what my husband did last night. It was ridiculous. That's always been there, and I guess there was enough room in the culture even back then to sort of speak about it and for the audience to laugh and go, yep, that's what happened last night at my place too. He didn't clean the dishes. He did, it's like that stuff was there,
Timeless and universal.
Yes, indeed. Indeed, yeah.
I'm chatting with Peter Houghton, who is playing George in Honor, which is on at the Red Stitch Actors Theatre in St Kilda. It opens on the 15th of February, running until the 16th of March. For tickets and more information, visit redstitch.net. Peter, thank you so much for joining me, and all the very best for the season.
Thank you. Can I I'll just give a brief shout out to our director too, Sam Strong, who's orchestrating this thing. He's doing a beautiful job, and so are the actors. It's a real pleasure to be a part of. Do come and see it. I think you'll enjoy it.
Love to. Thanks, Peter.
Thank you.